This is an artist's theory on the physics of time as a physical process. Basically, it is explaining an interactive process between the electrons that surround the atoms and the electromagnetic spectrum. We can see that the atoms interact with the electromagnetic spectrum because we see spectral lines relative to the atoms. Spectral lines may be observed either as an emission line or as an absorption line, and are formed by a single photon exchanging energy. When we have an absorption of photon energy, it is spontaneously re-emitted either in the same frequency as the original or in a cascade, as in photon energy cascading down from the sun. This process forms greater degrees of freedom for entropy or disorganization, and it also forms the energy and symmetry for the creativity and diversity of life. The wave-particle duality of light and matter in the form of electrons is forming an interactive process similar to the bits or zeros and ones of a computer, with the atoms of the periodic table forming standing waves in time, with the absorption and emission of light forming what we measure as a period of time. An important factor here is that the process is universal for the whole of the electromagnetic spectrum. There is always the absorption and emission of photon energy. If our eyes were more sensitive to microwave light rather than visible light, we would see that everything is white and radiating light like the inside of a light bulb. This process forms the continuum of time, with each photon energy oscillation or vibration only occurring once, and then it is gone forever. Therefore every moment in time is unique, with a totally new and uncertain future continuously unfolding. We have a universal and interactive process. When we turn on an electric light, billions of newly created photons flood out into the room. But this process of energy exchange is more fundamental than this, because there is an exchange of photon energy every time the atoms bond and break. Water is a perfect example of this, with hydrogen bonds continuously breaking and reforming. This process forms dipole moments, with the separation of charge, with the absorption and emission of photon energy. In this theory, this represents the future coming into existence, photon by photon, within the reference frame of the water, relative to the energy and momentum of the water. This is a totally interactive process. Just a change in atmospheric temperature, forming variations in photon oscillations, can lead to infinite snowflake diversity, with no two patterns of snowflakes being the same. This is a universal process. It is the same with cell life, with charge building up and photon energy being exchanged across the membrane of each cell relative to the structure of the cell. One of the main effects this process of energy exchange has on us is the aging process. But above all, and at the most fundamental level, this is a creative process of spherical symmetry forming and breaking, with an uncertain future unfolding photon by photon, with each new photon-electron coupling or dipole moment. In such a theory, the wave-particle duality of light and matter in the form of electrons is forming a blank canvas that we can choose how we interact with, forming a future of our own choice relative to the energy and momentum of our actions. This might sound far-fetched, but we already have an interactive process in Einstein's theory of relativity, with energy slowing up the rate that time flows, forming a curvature of space-time relative to the energy. In this theory, this represents a universal process of energy exchange, with the gravitational force being a secondary force to the electromagnetic force. The spontaneous absorption and emission of light, represented by the probability function or quantum wave particle function, radiates out as an inverse sphere, with both the electromagnetic force and the gravitational force sharing the inverse square law. This represents a dynamic three-dimensional process that starts at the smallest scale with the Planck constant, being a constant of action in the dynamic geometrical process that we see and feel as the passage of time, with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle representing the uncertainty of everyday life at the smallest scale of the creative process. At the most fundamental level, we can think of this as a process of spherical symmetry forming and breaking. It would be illogical to think that the symmetry and beauty of everyday life could arise out of chaos. But it is logical that symmetry and beauty could form out of a process of symmetry forming and breaking that also forms the uncertainty and chaos of everyday life. Each new photon-electron coupling, or dipole moment, forms an infinite branching point with the potential for ever greater symmetry formation relative to the atoms of the periodic table. The beauty of this symmetry can be seen in the great diversity of life and in the potential for art, poetry, morality, and love, with a potential infinity of possibilities in the hand and eye of the beholder. In Part 2, I will explain this process mathematically as a three-dimensional, geometrical, interactive process. Thanks for watching. Please share and subscribe.